This episode is sponsored by Smart Travel, a new podcast from NerdWallet. You know that one friend who always finds the best travel deals, picks the right cards, and somehow ends up in first class for the price of coach? How do they do that? Well, Smart Travel is like that friend, but in podcast form. They cover all things travel finance, like which travel cards earn their keep and which are just heavy, shiny metal, and planning group trips that won't ruin your budget or your friendships. So travel smarter and spend less. That's the key with help from NerdWallet. Follow Smart Travel wherever you get your podcasts. Armchair-Explorer is a part of the Voyescape podcast network. Check out all of their shows from around the world at voyescape.com. Hey guys, welcome to Armchair Explorer. My name's Aaron Miller. I'm a travel writer and your host. In today's bucket list episode, we have an experience that should be on the list of any ocean adventurer if you're brave enough. It's known as the Everest of Cage Dives. How cool does that sound? Most cage dives happen on the surface where sharks feed. This one goes all the way down to the ocean floor, which is insanely intense, but it also gives you a glimpse into the lives of these animals that you otherwise couldn't see. But we're not talking about any old sharks. We're talking about great whites. We're going to the Neptune Islands off the coast of South Australia. It's one of the places where they live year round. There's tons of them there. And taking us on this adventure is travel writer James Stewart. He's a really well-known travel writer about marine adventures for the Times and others. But he's not the star of this episode because this story is also about the guy who inspired Jaws, the movie, and the most horrific shark attack you will ever hear. Seriously, if you are scared of the ocean already, you may want to skip this one. But before we get going, I have a teeny weeny little favor to ask. I'm trying to get up to 200 reviews before the end of the year. We're on 166 for Spotify, 164 for Apple. So there's not a lot and it's not a huge amount to go. So if you do like the show, please click those glowing 5 stars or as many as you think we're worth. You don't even have to write anything. You just have to click those stars. It doesn't take any time at all. And by the way, if you think we're only worth 1 or 2 stars, you can just ignore this whole request together. Don't bother reviewing it, frankly. So I also want to give a shout out to Brooke and On the Road Full Time for leaving a lovely little note with their review last week. You guys are awesome. Thanks for listening. And also a little disclaimer on this one. This is a special edited version of an episode I put out a gazillion years ago. It was only the 3rd one I ever made, and I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. So if it sounds a little rough around the edges, it is. So please be gentle. But enough of that for now, because the adventure is about to begin.
So this story begins in 1963 when there was a young insurance salesman in his early 20s called Rodney Fox. He was the South Australian spearfishing champion and he was trying to defend his title off Adelaide. So he was underwater with a group of other guys and he was about 20 foot down and he spied this big grouper down there. And so he was sighting it up. Just before he's about to shoot, he feels this incredible force smash into his side and he's being propelled through the water. He has no idea what is going on at all. He's being propelled sideways through the water and he said there's this vice-like grip which is just crushing him, absolutely crushing him. And he said it was like being in the mouth of a dog, just being shaken. He realised it was a shark and it's clamped him round the middle from his waist right up to his shoulder. Started hitting the thing as hard as he could, pushing it, punching it, slamming it, ended up just hitting it in its eyes. And it let go and he pushed himself out and ended up hanging onto its back, which I said to him, look, that was incredible foresight really to do that. He said there was no thinking whatsoever. It was beyond thought. But obviously he couldn't be bitten there, but you do run out of breath hanging onto the back of a shark. So he kicks to the surface and he's there on the surface now, gasping for breath. There's blood everywhere. He looks down and he said the most terrifying moment of all then, of this whole experience, because up until that point it would just be pure adrenaline and instinct and just fear. And the worst moment, he said, was when he looked down and he saw this shark, and it was coming up at him directly from underneath with its mouth open. Terrifying. I mean, just astonishingly white fear. So he kicked out a flipper at it, and the shark swerved. And when you're spearfishing, you have a floating box which you collect all your catch into, and it's attached to you by a rope. So it floats on the surface. Everything you catch goes into this on the allotted hour or so that you have the spearfishing championship. So he kicked a flipper at it. The shark swerved. It swallows this box. Fine, he's safe, you think. No, because the shark then now dives, and it dives underwater, chewing this box full of fish. But of course, Rodney's attached to this box full of fish, so he gets yanked underwater after this massive, horrific shark bite, and he's now being dragged down deeper and deeper and deeper underwater. And he did say, he thought, after all this, I'm going to drown. I mean, what a crazy way to die. As the shark is biting on the box, trying to chew it, it bites through the rope. Rodney drifts up to the surface, like a leaf, he said, like a leaf falling downwards, but going up. And he's picked up by a boat and he's taken to hospital. He was moments from dying. Absolutely, his veins were literally on the verge of collapsing. But as luck would have it, there was a surgeon who was just back from a conference on how to keep veins open for traumatized patients. And so he thought, look, this guy's going to die in 5-10 minutes. Let's give this a go. So he did. It worked. Rodney's still alive and he survived. It was a major press sensation at the time. This is sort of where the story gets quite interesting for me, because Rodney loved being in the water. He loved swimming, and he wanted to try and understand why the shark had attacked him. So he was in the zoo with his child, and they were feeding the lions, and he had this epiphany moment. What happens if we are in the cage and then the lions are outside? So as a result of that, he invented cage diving. No one had even thought of it before. Now, as soon as you have cage diving, then you can now get into the water with great whites for the first time ever. This is in, mid-60s by now. So it's a revolutionary moment. No one had ever been in the water with great whites before. It was just considered far, far too dangerous. So as a result of that, Rodney got a call from this guy called Steven Spielberg, who was making this film called Jaws, and he needed some footage of live sharks. Rodney ended up having to try and use a lipstick to do 3 bullet holes on a live shark snout as it came out the water to replicate bullets. Actually, Spielberg complained about that. He said, look, I needed 4 shots, you only got me 3. When a shark's snapping at your hand, I sort of guess those are fairly low down your priority list. I'd come to meet Rodney on the 40th anniversary of Jaws, and I was going to join him on one of his scientific research trips out to the Neptune Islands. Every trip that Rodney runs now is for tourists, but everyone is also involved for scientific research, usually shark identification to the Neptune Islands. And they're a clump of rocks in the Great Australian Bight, about 30 miles offshore from Port Lincoln. Sharks attack on the surface. So the idea is by taking you down underwater, you're seeing the environment the sharks just live in. This is where they cruise around. For amongst many divers, they know it as the Everest of shark diving, or as Andrew Fox, Rodney's son, who is mid-50s probably, he's done 40 plus years of cage diving now. Astonishing with great whites. He called it out of the kiddie pool. So you stay for 3 nights on their small boat, and I know what you're thinking. I know you're probably thinking cage diving, ethically, that's suspect. With the Rodney Fox trips, everything is gold standard for conservation. There is no chumming of water. They put down some fish and that creates an oil slick which brings the sharks there. The idea is that the only thing that will attract the sharks are products which are already in the water. So it's a fairly rough crossing, and you bounce away and people were being sick. And it's almost the next stop south from Australia there is the Antarctic. The Southern Ocean is a fairly brutal sea. So big, long swells, and you roll out, slamming against the sea, a lot of spray. And it's a fairly small boat at about 70, 80 foot. And so you arrive, the anchor chain rattles down. The sea is an astonishing colour. It's this deep sapphire. And they drop some of the fish in the water. The tuna goes in the water, and so there's an oil slick of fish, and oil just blobs scudding out across the water. 6mm wetsuits on, you put on boots, you put on gloves, balaclavas, you prepare the scuba tanks, and you wait. And then after a while, a few hours, you see these shadows start to appear in the water. And they really are just shadows, and they're sort of cruising through this astonishingly blue water. And they sort of come closer and closer and start circling the boat, and there's more and more of them. And it starts off with maybe one or two, and then by the time we were ready to go, there were 7. So it's crunch time, finally, and you climb into the cage. Now, the cage is slung outside the boat. There is a box at the bottom of the cage which is loaded up with tuna guts and gills and various bits and pieces, which are not pretty at all. And you climb into the cage, and there's yourself. I was with 2 other divers, and then there is a dive master who's been there for a long time. In my case, it was Andrew Fox, Rodney's son. So they swing the cage out on this arm, and you're now dangling over the sea with the sharks literally beneath you. And they start lowering it into the water on this wire. And I have to be honest, everything starts screaming in your head, this cannot be a good idea, even though you know you're in a cage, because that cold water comes over your feet as you're lowering into the water, and then it comes up your legs, and it seeps up over your torso, then over your chest, and then it covers your face, and you're dropping down. And then you can just see all the sharks there above you, and as you're falling down through the water, they just come over the top of you, and it's these white bellies, ghost white bellies, coming over through the sort of almost splintered sunshine, coming down through the water, and you're dropping further and further, deeper and deeper down, and these bellies, white bellies, are just cruising slowly down with you, following that scent trail all the way down until you're about 80 foot down. And even though you know it's irrational, you know it's an irrational fear. It's what the author of Jaws, Peter Bletchley, called the atavistic fear of being eaten. It is there, that fear, you can't escape it. And it's almost like being in there as you're dropping down underwater with these sharks following you down and following the scent of that tuna blood. It almost strips you back to yourself. Because as you're going down and you're sort of steadying your breathing, because you tend to breathe quite quickly, and you're rechecking your air supply even though you know it's okay, there's all these what ifs that just come thumping into your head. You know, what happens if my air runs out? Or what happens if a small shark comes thumping through lunging through the gap, the eye level gap which you look through between the bars? Or then the worst of all, oh my God, what happens if the cage hoist, the cable itself, actually snaps and there's no way for the cage to come back up? As soon as you are down there, now 80, 90 foot below the water, and with a boat just above you, which is looking like a tiny little bath toy, it's that far, then you get all these suppressed fears just come bubbling up, and you're just going to have to deal with them, because there is no escape. We now have 7 sharks around you, and there is no way in God's earth you could pay me enough money to try attempt getting out of this cage and then swimming back to the surface. It's just not going to happen. And then you're there hanging above a kelp forest, and finally the sharks are coming up towards you, and they're at eye level. The first one that came past was about a meter away, and it just cruised past right at eye level. And you can see this huge black eye watching me, watching it. And you can see the mouth just slightly open. And you can see these big cross-hatched teeth. And it's crazy. And you know you're okay. But your breathing goes crazy. I mean, your breathing goes fast, and you have to slow yourself down, because you can't, otherwise you'll burn through oxygen. And so you're trying to say, calm, zen, this is all right. Before we went down, Andrew had said, look out for rays and squid. And you can't, you just can't take your eyes off the sharks. Huge, powerful shapes, about 15, 20 foot long. They are big. It's an incredible experience. There was one point where Andrew was out of the cage, which he did a lot, actually. And there was a shark coming straight at him, and as I was watching. Now, when you're wearing a mask, you don't really have any peripheral vision. You just can't see out there at all. It blocks it off. And so I thought, oh my God, do I need to tell Andrew there's a great white shark coming straight at him? And he's there taking photographs of things. And this shark came right up to him, and he just gave it a little push on its nose and pushed it away. I mean, that, my friends, is comfort with sharks. And the strange thing is that as you're underwater, initially it feels terrifying, and then it's just utterly fascinating. They are the most mesmerizing animals. There's an immense power there, but there's just an incredible beauty as well. The colors are astonishing. They're a sort of gunmetal gray, and there's almost a sort of steely silver and occasional bronze. And the shape is just fantastic. You just realize the hydrodynamics of these animals is astonishing. And they've got this sort of slow, effortless power of just swimming through the water, and we're there at the bottom with kelp swirling around us. It sounds ridiculous, but it was an incredibly beautiful moment, and it was almost zen and calm. My initial reaction was to go down with a GoPro, and I just thought, no, I really do not want to think about filming. I just want to be down here and just watch it and take it in. And I'm so glad I did, because instead of just looking there through a GoPro, honestly, the experience is seared into my brain. Back on the boat, you go through footage that Andrew had taken during the trips underwater. And you're starting identifying the sharks. And he will talk through, oh, look, there's Bubbles, lovely shark, very smiley. There's Merlin, he's very curious. And there's Cuddles, no kidding. One of the sharks was called Cuddles. And everyone on board that boat calls themselves a shark hugger. They honestly believe that sharks are the most incredible things, the most incredible species. And it's a strange thing, but having been underwater with them, your perception of them changes entirely. Andrew told me at one point that when he did an expedition in the 80s, he had returned to see a large great white hanging off this crane at the wharf. And he said they hadn't just killed a shark, they'd killed Bentfin, I think its name was. And it was a shark that Andrew had known for several years, and had seen it just days beforehand. And all the fishermen were there, drinking a beer and acting heroes. And for him, it was just horrific. He felt that this was a friend. And he said it really came home to him then that they had an obligation to champion the protection of these animals. And it was so true. Being underwater with them totally changes your perception. They stop becoming these rabid killers, these crazy killers. They become astonishing animals. They become apex predators. They become the equivalent of lions of the sea. They're still powerful, potentially dangerous animals. They're no puppies. They will, or could, bite you in two. But this is a species that has been an apex predator and has survived 400 million years of evolution. And rightly or wrongly, what does it say that they're so able to be struck down by humans in less than 100 years? For me, that says that the seas are an incredibly fragile place, that sharks have an amazing job within that, and that humans do a fantastic job of messing it all up, and that we've got an absolute responsibility to the sharks, and we've got a responsibility to the seas. And I think seeing them in that environment makes you realize that. I think that's what's most interesting about it. Peter Bletchley talked about the atavistic fear of being eaten. Sharks are the only animals left on the planet which sort of puts you straight back into a time of dinosaurs where you are prey. And seeing them in a situation as you would a lion on a safari turns it into something else. You realize there's a sort of strange, almost awe-inspiring beauty to these animals, and it feels an amazing privilege to be with them. And really, that's the bit that Spielberg should have included in Jaws.
Quick question. Do you want travel tips from people who have actually been there? Our show is co-hosted by Tim Johnson, an award-winning travel journalist who's been to more than 145 countries around the world. And I'm David Brody, the other co-host who's been travel podcasting for 20 years while traveling to 50-plus countries around the world.
In about 10 or 20 minutes per show, we break down a destination with the kind of insight you usually only get from long guidebooks or hours of research.
So if you want expert advice, zero fluff, and travel inspiration that you can actually use, search for Travel in 10 wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can also find us at boyescape.com.
Hi, I'm Pauline Fromer, host of the Fromer's Travel Podcast. We post new episodes weekly, detailing the kinds of money-saving tips and cultural insights that will make your trips richer without making you significantly poorer. We do so by interviewing real travel experts like TV host Samantha Brown, Fromer's authors from around the globe, and such public figures as Free Solo's Alex Honnold. It's a fun travel party. I hope you can join us.